Hello once again, witchy people. Bees, bees, nothing but bees. Michael Caine actually never said in the film The Swarm. His character, Brad Crane, actually did say, bees, bees, what a lot of bees. So as you can gather by that, today we're talking about Michael Caine. No, we're not. We're talking about bees. So whether it be bumble, red-tailed, white-tailed, tree, honey or common, bees are amazing. And they have always been considered to be quite a lucky sign. A bee landing on you is said to be very, very lucky. And if one flies into your home, it's said that they will bring a visitor after them, very shortly after them. If you harm the bee whilst it's in your home or force it out when it's not ready to leave, the visitor will bring you bad luck or bad news. So I guess a lot of the mythology and folklore associated with bees comes from the fact that they are the source of honey, which was used for healing as well as for nourishment, and it was obviously a very precious commodity. And so that's probably where the symbolism of being not just for luck but for abundance and lots of different things. We'll go into that. So the buzzing that they make, obviously because it's a bee buzzes, and the alighting from one flower to another. You know, bees, to make a pound of honey, one bee can travel 10 miles a day easily, but also have to visit up to 2 million flowers just to make a pound of honey. That's pretty amazing. Anyway, as they alight from one flower to another, never seeming to rest really for too long in any one place, is where they kind of get there, is where we think of them as being busy bees. And the bumbling part of a bumblebee is probably the way they fly, the meandering sort of bumbling way they fly is where we get the name bumblebee from. Now they're just very distinctive buzz, because they do have bumblebees, any bees have quite a low, deep buzz, and their Latin name is bombus. Part of the Latin name is bombus, and that comes from the loudness of the buzzing. That's where it comes from. Now, a lot of people think that bumblebees are honeybees, and they're not. Bumblebees actually don't make honey, or they don't make honey because they don't have to store food for overwinter. So there are, as you can gather already, a lot of folklore and superstitions associated with bumblebees, and there is a lot. If you treat a bee badly, there's a lot of superstition attached to that, and that may be because a bee will not settle or stay in a place where it doesn't like the conditions, to the point where if a bee cannot leave a place where it's not 100% happy with the conditions, it will die. It would rather die than live somewhere where it's not comfortable. So that's kind of partly where the bad luck comes from. Bees also do not like argumentative households. If there's an argument going on in the house, it said a bee will not come in, or it certainly won't stay. And they especially don't like cussing and swearing. So can't believe that's actually true, because we get a lot of bees in our house, and I'm not saying we don't cuss, because we do. So talking about a bee's own home, the hive, it's said that a hive should never be owned by one person alone. It should always be owned by a family or a group. It shows more productivity. if it is owned by one person alone, that person should be unmarried and single, because then it is said that the bees will draw love to the person who owns the hive, because the bee will, the folklore is that the bee would naturally try to make a family, a community. And one phrase that we used to hear a lot when I was very young, and you don't really hear it anymore, I think there was a film made about it, but or a film made using the phrase, and it was called "Tell It to the Bees," or "Go Tell the Bees." And that came from where if you had a hive, the hive always had to be kept up to date on the latest family news, especially deaths, because the beehive, the whole hive, had to mourn the passing. And if they weren't allowed to mourn the passing of the family member, part of the hive, part of their own community, they could leave the hive, and if they left the hive and didn't return, then that was bad luck to the householder. And you also had to tell them if, especially if the daughter of the household was due to be married, or she announced her engagement, because the bees would then bestow good luck on the marriage and make it an abundant and fertile marriage. So bees were very, very popular with ancient pharaohs as well, and they used the honeybee as a royal symbol for thousands of years. I think it's between 3000 BCE and about 350 BCE, so, you know, quite a long time. The ancient Greeks believed that if a baby was touched on the lip by a bee, the baby would grow up to become a great poet or speaker. If a baby was stung by a bee, and this is only a baby, mind you, not an adult. I think it was assumed because the baby was innocent and would not be harming a bee on purpose, because obviously if a bee stings you, it can die. So, because it detaches its sting. Anyway, so if a bee stung a baby, it meant that the bee was passing on its knowledge to the baby, especially the knowledge of the afterworld. And so that child would grow up being able to communicate with the dead and to traverse between one realm or another. If they were stung on the face, which was more often than not anyway, because obviously it was the face that's usually uncovered, depending on where they were stung on the face could mean something. So if they stung near the eyes, it would be, you know, they would see spirits. Or if they stung near the ear, they would hear spirits. So once again, lots of folklore. So there are quite a few deities that are associated with bees, including, and it's not just bees, it's honey as well, Aphrodite, Vishnu, Pan, Ra, sun god Ra, that was another one. So some more mythology and folklore about bees. If a bee lands on your hand, it's said that they bring money, so money's coming your way. In some cultures, bees are said to represent purity, and this is because the worker bees in a hive never mate. They are there just to work. So they are a representation of purity, sexual purity. Like I said, that there are a lot of ancient cultures who believe that bees were messengers between worlds. So the ancient Greeks believed this. In Celtic mythology, it's also very much apparent that bees are a messenger between our world and the spirit realm. And they're also associated with wisdom, especially in Celtic mythology. And bees and honey also appear in the Norse Eddas often associated with, and I can never say this word, Yggdrasil, the world tree. Of course, apart from the mythology, it's quite important to remember that without bees, and bees are a declining population, without bees we could be in a lot of trouble. Bees benefit other living things by pollinating plants, so that affects our food supply. So without bees to spread pollen, the food supply would dwindle, and we wouldn't have as much food on the planet, and that could be serious environmental problems. So we do need bees. Because of the amount of folklore and mythology associated with bees, they can also play a huge role in magical practices and spell working as well. So bees are, if you notice, bees are incredibly protective of the hive. So you can use that to draw on it, to use that in magic. If you find a piece of a beehive, you can put it on your altar or keep it in your home to represent abundance and protectiveness. But you can also, if you've got bees in your garden, you're lucky enough to have a beehive in your garden, you can ask the bees, because they're so protective of their hive, and then you become part of their family, you can ask them to protect your home as well. And because the actual hive contains the honey, which is the most precious of commodities, of course, you can also use that to ask the bees to help bring abundance into your own home. Now the the hexagonal shape of honeycomb is quite important. 6 was believed to be the number of Aphrodite, and obviously Venus, and was the sacred geometric shape of harmony. Bees, now I mentioned it briefly, the Greeks believed that bees were messengers to the afterworld, but that's because they believed that bees held the souls of their dead ancestors, or their dead priestesses, not just ancestors, but specifically priestesses. And so they were greatly revered. They, it was thought to be, to do with this, the honeycomb was the perfect shape, and it was all harmonious, and the bees were priestesses. And Pythagoras, the mathematician Pythagoras, not just the triangle, but the mathematician, believed that the honeycomb, the actual shape, the honeycomb form, suggested a symmetry which was a reflection of the cosmos itself. So, it was all, you can use all of this in magical workings. You could use it to represent fertility, but also purity. You can use it to represent abundance and luck and protectiveness. So you can also use the idea, because you've got to remember, honey is an antiseptic, and it's very good for healing. So you can also use anything to do with bees in healing magic. Now, of course, you can also use beeswax and beeswax candles and such like. And yellow is obviously a very prosperous colour. If you have problems at home, or you need to build a family unit, the family unit is fractured, then you should go and find a beehive and contemplate that in front of a beehive, and that's then kind of brings forward that, the unity of a beehive is the unity of a family. Obviously the fertility element comes in, that queen bees are very, very, very fertile little creatures, and also the abundance, because they work so hard. Bees in general work so hard. That's an abundance, which is also relative to fertility. And in some old legends, and this is particularly true to some of Europe, but especially England and the mid sort of English counties, bees were associated with telling the truth and being able to find out the truth and the uncovering of deceptive practices. And one specific tradition was that women used to lead their lovers past a beehive, and it said that this is before they got married, because if a bee stung them, it would show that they were an unfaithful sort of person. If the bees didn't sting them, they were going to be faithful and true, so they would make a good marriage partner. Because bees obviously have a stinger to protect their home, you can also use representation of bee in a lot of defense magic as well. And also you can use the bee, because they're very good at finding pollen, searching out flowers, because they go from flower to flower. You can also use it in a lot of retrieval magic to bring things back to you. So a little bit about the history of bees, a little bit about bees in magical work, and a little bit about the mythology of bees. I love bees. They're one of my favourite little creatures. I love them. So everywhere. Who doesn't love a bumblebee? I mean, and strangely enough, just to add on to the end of that, from all the folklore that's associated with it, especially with babies being stung, when I was 6 weeks old, speaking funny, when I was 6 weeks old, I was actually stung by a bee. And I was stung right in the corner by my eye, which is quite interesting considering that I am a hedge witch for a specific reason, obviously. But I can see, it's a bit odd, that's not my main thing. I'm more clairaudient than clairsentient, clairvoyant. I am clairsentient, but clairaudient. I hear things more than anything else, and I can sense things, I can smell things. But I think that's quite normal for a lot of things as well. A lot of hedge witches and people that speak to the spirit realm tend not to see things very clearly anyway. Physically see things. Anyway, I'm going on and on and on about nothing. So there you go. Bees. What a lot of bees. Thank you for watching, witchy people. I'll be back soon. Bye for now.